Hi there, Teresa. Welcome. You're the only person here so far. How are you today? If you're willing to come off mute. Hey, you want to say hi? Teresa, well, here's Vicky also. Welcome, Vicky and Teresa. I think we've got some folks on YouTube, I'm not sure. And I expect a few more. It's the first day back from work for a lot of people, so we had no idea how this date was going to work. But welcome to the two of you who are here and anyone who's on YouTube. I'll get started. It is just right after 4 o'clock UK time. And I see Olivia coming in. It'd be great if you would introduce yourselves in the chat box, name, role, where you're calling from, if you wish, or why not? We've got a small group. Let's do it verbally if you're willing. Hello, Olivia.
Hello.
Hi. Would you like to start? Introduce yourself, say hello.
How many are we on the call? 5. I've only got your face so far. Froda, Laurie, Teresa, Vicky.
And yourself.
Oh, very intimate.
Very intimate. Kind of what I expected for the first day back at work in September.
So it's Teresa and Vicky. Right, well, I'm Olivia and I'm a coach and I've attended nearly all Laurie's lectures, seminars, whatever we call them. What else would you like me to say?
London. You're calling from London.
I'm calling from London.
Across the street from the beautiful Natural History Museum. Yes. Sorry, I just gave your location away. Okay, we're recording on Zoom as well as YouTube. Vicky, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I'm Vicky. I'm originally from England, but I'm currently in Southwest France. And I've been an English language teacher for about 12 years, but I've recently trained to be a coach. So I'm starting off with language coaching, and I've just finished my Ericsson training. So I'm looking to get ICF accredited. So I need to build up my hours. That's where I'm at.
Good for you. Congratulations. I remember last year when you were starting to think about going into coach training. So good.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And Teresa, would you like to say something? I saw you introduce yourself in the chat. It'd be great to have your voice if you're willing.
Yes, of course. Hi, Laurie. Hi, everybody. Great to meet you. I'm a coach also, and I'm based in the northeast of England. So I've got a Geordie accent. And Laurie, I just loved hearing you on WBEX when you talked about your traffic light system, and my business is accelerator coaching, which is I use a lot of car metaphors, and and I just had to come along to one of your sessions because I'm curious to know more about you and what you do, and obviously this subject as well. So yeah, great to meet you all.
Great, thanks, Teresa. Nice to have you here. So today we start with a new series of webinars. So last year we did a series called Neuroscience Made Simple, and it was directed a lot at coaches, coaching all kinds of people. And this series is called Rewiring Workplaces, and it's a little more about internal organizations and how to apply some of the neuroscience principles to organizations. So if you're a coach, you might think through, if you're coaching people in organizations, how this might apply. And for those of you who might be out there watching this later or on YouTube, if you're a learning and development person or HR or someone internally, this might apply to you more directly. So we are Shook Svensson, and we are interested in helping organizations create a culture where people and teams thrive. And that's our main focus. And this workshop is called Back to Work. And it really is about back to the office. So we're coming back from summer, going back to work, but we're also in that phase of coming back to the office, some of us. And I've talked to many people in different organizations in the last in the last week, but also in the last couple of months. And there's a lot of ambiguity about, do we come back to the office, and who's deciding what, and is there is there a system? What are we going to do? And a lot of people are figuring it out. And we figured that. That's why we planned this session, wanting to help people in organizations figure out, well, what's going on with coming back to work? And so I'll present some of the neuroscience work that we do using the Be Safe and Certain model, which I've presented a number of times before on these webinars, and you might have seen. It was even part of the traffic light tool, Teresa. But we're looking this time at how to use that to help us understand what's going on in the back to work, back to the office, back to the workplace question. Okay, so that's where we're going. Here are these questions of who will go to the office, who's going to work from home, how often do we go to the office if we do, and who decides, and what will happen there. A lot of questions of, am I just going to take my laptop into work and sit and work like I would at home, and why am I commuting all that way back and forth just to do that when I could stay at home? Because I've been doing that for a year and a half. Any thoughts from you all? Have you heard these similar questions or comments from people?
I don't know about the deciding bit. I think quite often the companies decide.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. Is the company deciding, or do people get to also contribute? And yeah. So yeah, the companies are, from my experience, companies are deciding, but also some companies are not deciding. I think they're waiting to see what people do. Like, office is open, who's coming?
I think it depends a bit on the level of the person in the company. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he was saying, oh, I'm thinking of doing this 3-2 model. And I said, oh, what's that? He said, I can decide whether I do 3 days at home, 2 days at work. So he seems to have a bit of a decision on what he can do. But then I have other people who are, it's getting imposed, everybody back to the office and just sort it out. So I think it's a bit very much up in the air at the moment, what different people are doing.
Yeah.
Apple have just said they're not coming back till January now.
Yeah.
Personal vested interest in when they come back.
Yes, you do. Yeah, and that's quite a statement, isn't it? Not coming back till January. I've heard a couple of other bits.
At the earliest.
At the earliest, yeah.
It was 6th of September, then it was October, and now it's January.
Wow. Teresa, you were going to say?
Yeah, and I'm hearing what Vicky and Olivia have said, but I'm kind of hearing it from the business owners' perspective and within the councils when I'm working with them. And I think, there's a lot of business owners have ended up working from home, and all of their employees are, and now they're wanting to reconnect. So they're actually looking for an office again and starting. Yeah, so they've realised that they need that connection. So.
Yeah. One organization I talked to was just coming up for renewal on a lease as we went into lockdown, and they let go of the lease, and now they're looking at, well, do we find a new office space? Do we go back there? What, if half the people come? Yeah, welcome. I see that you're here.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Good to see you again. So we're just having a discussion today about, are we going back to the workplace? This isn't about any decisions. We have a few tips. They won't be anything out of the extraordinary, I don't think, but we're using the Be Safe and Certain model to explore. So this is an exploration. And as always, it's an interactive workshop like webinar. So let's look at our emotional needs. So here's the emotional brain. It is pre-programmed with a set of needs that help us make decisions. So something happens and the emotional brain is comparing it against, oh, is this good for survival? It's really a survival thing. Is this good for survival? Not good for survival. Let's go for it. Let's not go for it. And the go for it, not go for it decisions in the emotional brain are feel like to the human being things like positivity and motivation on one hand, or an engagement, or stress, reaction, anger, and disengagement. So we've got a engagement, disengagement, continuum that this emotional brain is acting on. And when our needs are met, we get engaged, and the needs that are being met might not have anything logically to do with what we're doing at work. And that's where I think some people get confused. It's like, well, why do we need to do that? It doesn't have anything to do with our work output. But it has everything to do with the human being and them being there and being engaged and being happy enough to get on with their work. Happy brains learn better, happy brains work better. So if we put some attention on that, a lot of people are resistant to that, but if we put some attention on that, it certainly does increase engagement and has people be happy and creates a culture of more positivity where people want to stay. And of course, when needs are not met, we become irritable and stressed. And stress just makes us more reactive, makes us more susceptible to being irritable and reacting to these different things. So there is a downward spiral, definitely, on this stress side. So here are the 6 elements that we look at, the social brain elements. The brain is a social brain, so it's always looking at self relative to others. So how do I belong? Do I have status relative to others, and autonomy? I'll be going through these step by step, and we'll be having conversations about them. But for those of you I know all of you who are here, you've probably seen this before, but those who are watching the recording may not have. Be safe and certain. So how do we work with that in this context of going back to the workplace? So the first 3 elements are belonging, status, and autonomy. And with belonging, so people need to feel that they belong, that they're part of something. A lot of people have been suffering from that in lockdown. It's like, do I belong? Who do I belong to? I've talked to so many people who've been hired since lockdown, and they've never actually met their colleagues, only virtually. They've met them, they haven't met them in person. And there's a different feeling, a different sense of belonging. And so there might be I want to go back to the workplace or into the workplace for the first time to actually meet and connect with people. So belonging is definitely pushing a lot of people towards, I want to go back in for the first time. Status, we need to feel relevant and important. Not necessarily one way or another on this invitation to go back to the workplace or requirement to go back. But if some people go back and others don't, there might be a difference there. Oh, I'm comparing myself to others. Oh, I wasn't asked to come back, or I was asked to come back, but not everyone else does, and now I have to commute. Yeah, and then there's autonomy. So we need to feel that we have options. If companies are dictating, here's what you're going to do, people may react because they don't get a choice in the matter. And I've heard that both. If people were not going back and we are going back full time, people can react in either way. They don't get any input. Then the second half of the Be Safe and Certain model, fairness, expectations, and certainty. So fairness, I think, is a really big one here. Fairness is always a really big one, to be fair, if I can say that. We need to be treated fairly. That's what our brain is saying, is there needs to be fairness between members of the team. But fairness is all subjective. It's all based on perception. There is no objective fairness. And so we can always get ourselves in hot water around this. What is fair around going back to the workplace? Is it having everybody come in 2 days a week and work from home 2 days a week? Is it more fair to have people choose? Is it more fair to look at what jobs need to be in the workplace? Somebody will always push back and say that's not fair because they have a different viewpoint. But it is a source of revenge, unfairness, as people want to get back at. And get back at in the workplace isn't like your normal superhero revenge most of the time. It might look like not turning a video on a web conference or a meeting. It might look like not showing up at work and not telling anybody, and then saying, oh, but I have something that I need to explore. It might, revenge to unfairness might look like not responding to emails or not being a team player, not putting in one's all. So all of those are pretty significant responses alter the sense of unfairness. And we need to recognize that it's all perceived and sense of unfairness. And when we're planning something, we look at how can we take others into account and either explain to them what's happening or make sure that things are as fair as possible, whatever that is, given it's subjective. Huge, big conversation we can have about that. And then expectations. We need to set our expectations so they're clear. If we don't set expectations, our brain will make them up. And then we base our expectations on what we've made up. Everyone else is coming into the workplace. I'm coming into the office. I'm expecting everyone else will, but maybe there's only a third. Wow, what's going on there? That would create some kind of reaction and disappointment, perhaps. Lack of expectations being met creates just pain and disappointment, emotional pain and disappointment. Uncertainty. We need to know what's coming, what's going to happen, who will be there, what's going on. It's similar to expectations in a way, but it's a little more tangible, looking for the tangible things. Any thoughts about any of those? I will be going through them one at a time, and we can have bits of conversation about each of these. I'm just curious at this moment if there's any thoughts, especially in the context of coming back to the workplace. Yeah.
I think it is like you said. I feel it in the same way as you tell. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a little office where we are 16 people. And I guess we work in that way, as you just explained.
Mm.
Well, we are also more or less individual. But I guess that the values you just mentioned here is the way most of the Danes think.
Mm.
Great.
Yeah, it's very aligned with Scandi values.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can get a little bit of conversation going around each of these, just a couple of minutes on each. So, belonging. Imagine yourselves being part of an office team and you haven't seen your office mates for a year and a half in person. Of course, you've been meeting with them. You haven't had any of those, a cup of coffee or a spontaneous meeting or a chat in the corridor. None of that has happened. And you might be feeling a little detached. So what would you say around wanting to come back to the office space in terms of belonging? Or maybe put yourself in the leader's shoes. What do you want to do around belonging?
I think I'd like to arrange obviously a meeting, some sort of get together so people can connect to each other rather than just they come in and they don't know what they're doing. To have something where you create an event that they know that there's something different to make the transition from how they've been working to how they're working now. So I'd really want to create something like that and get the bonds going, the connection going again, because it's very difficult to go from one space to another without some transition from it. That's what I'd look at, have it be fun in some way and organise that. So I think that's what I'd look at as a leader, how to do something to help it easier for people to have that transition back to a different way of working.
Great. Anybody else?
I'm just wondering if you had the first day completely free of work, it's just sort of networking and getting together again and meeting and chatting and catching up.
Great. So kind of similar, just time for a bit of social time and reconnecting. Yeah.
Work taking secondary aspects.
Yeah. So it'd be a total benefit to come back to the workplace. Or a social benefit, anyway.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I've just worked with a team and some are introverts, some have been quite happy at home. The team quite a lot of times the teams all work independently anyway, and they kind of in this forced situation to suddenly all get along. And so I think the leader you'd hope, a good leader, would have enabled this sense of belonging all the way through in the digital world, and have a one-on-one with each of them and have that psychological kind of safety as well. And so it's really tricky, isn't it, just to kind of get everyone in one space in one day and everyone be fine.
Right. Right. So how do we keep a sense of belonging going all the time, even virtually?
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's, so here's a tip here. I've heard from many organizations are quite aware of this, many of them, but some aren't, like, oh, well, we got to bring the people back, but what are they going to do? We're just having them do what they do at home. Some of them don't want to be at home, so come into the office. And it's a choice for some and demand by others. I think somebody said it, don't just come back and set your laptop up to work here, but something you could be doing at home. Or at least don't force people to. If they want to, that's different. So let's talk about status. Status is about knowing you have a position, knowing that you're relevant, knowing that you're needed, and people trust you and have some regard for you. Can you see how that might be either supported by a move back to the office, or how we move back to the office, or how it might, some people might feel threatened or disengaged because, oh, well, I'm not important. Anyways, you could see how that could get set up.
Everybody needs a safe spot. That's psychological. And if you know that you are needed and that you are belonging, it will be much easier to come back.
Yes. Yeah. And how would, any way that anybody would say, how do we create that sense of safety and appreciation for all? And by the way, Shensen, hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Just kidding.
Good to have
Nice.
you. We're going through, we're talking about moving back to the workplace. How do we make decisions about how to come back, and who's going to decide? And we're using Be Safe and Certain, which I know you know, to just look at those. I think we just lost her. Okay. Any thoughts about status? How we make sure that people have a sense of, oh, I'm important, even though I'm not being invited back to the workplace. Maybe there's, Teresa, were you? No, yeah. So I've heard different things of, I want to be invited back and I'm not, so therefore I don't feel important, as well as, oh, my opinion isn't important, my needs aren't being regarded, so I don't feel like I'm important. I've heard less, to be honest, around status. I haven't heard people being really threatened. So maybe we move on to the next one, because it sounded like I was leading right into autonomy. The next one is autonomy. I have heard people talk about this quite a bit. Well, I don't get to choose. So Olivia, you said Apple's out till January 6th. Maybe some people really wanted to come back. Others, I've met another IT company, it's much smaller than Apple, that said we're letting go of our office spaces. We're never coming back. We're always going to be working from home. And that was quite a shock to people. Wait a minute, that's not who I signed up for. And I know some people are leaving when they don't, and some people are leaving because they're forced back. And a lot of that comes back to, did I get to choose? Did I get to choose? Because if we don't get to have a say, then we can go back into that a little bit of, the pushback, the irritable and disengaged place. Any thoughts about autonomy?
I've just thought of this, Laurie, but it's just occurred to me that a lot of people have had a lot of autonomy, haven't they, over the past 18 months, sort of almost gifted to them. So it's actually a real battle for leaders and companies to kind of, people will expect choice because they've had so much autonomy. But it does lead into fairness as well. So
yes. Yeah. A lot of we've had a lot of autonomy, and we might get a little used to that. Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts about autonomy?
If you have autonomy, then you decide, and then you can do the best. I guess it's a great plus because you develop self-esteem, and if people trust in you, you make better work.
Yes. I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Probably a little bit of status wrapped up in that, as well as autonomy, maybe even fairness. You can see these are overlapping with each other. Yeah.
I think also it's autonomy is feeling heard, isn't it? Sort of if someone feels that their concerns or opinions have been heard and voiced, then even if the outcome isn't what they'd hoped for, they still feel that they've had some autonomy. So it's up to the company who's dealing with those people to make it, just enable people to feel heard.
Yes. And I was just talking with the CFO from an organization this morning where they had surveyed everybody. The whole organization was surveyed, 110 people, I think. Do you want to come back? If so, how often? And if not, what are your concerns? And so they were asking. And what I know from systems work is when you ask people, you also need to let them know how you're using that information, and at least make it visible that you are responding to their input. Yeah. So in that organization that the 110 person organization, they've decided something like 4 days per month people are coming back. We ask that you come back 4 days per month minimum, and somewhere between 20 and 40%, we'd love to have people in the office 20 to 40% of the time. So there's a little bit of choice. Yeah, and it's not once a week, it's 4 times a month. It might be 4 days in a row, but it's please have your, more development kind of meetings in person. And so they put out a recommendation, but there's so much choice about it. And that seems to feel, a few people actually came around. Oh, I was really nervous and now I'm feeling better and can handle that. And it was starting in October besides. Okay, so the next one is fairness. We've touched on it quite a bit. I can imagine many people having fairness reactions or feeling that things were unfair for a lot of different reasons. And I'd love for you guys to talk about, what would be fairness for you if you were in an organization and somebody was making a declaration, of how it's going to be? Would that feel fair, unfair? What would create fairness or unfairness for you?
I mean, I'm wondering, going back to Apple, whether the fact that they've dictated initially that they would come in on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays throughout the world, which caused an uproar. And I'm not sure what they're dictating for January, if they've got as far as dictating, but that was definitely supposedly fair because everybody throughout the world had to come back on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays.
That's great. That is one aspect of fairness, isn't it? Everyone around the world is doing the same thing. But others might look at it and say, there's no reason for me to come in 3 days a week.
I think they did, particularly with the break between the Wednesday. Why couldn't it be 3 consecutive days rather than Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays? I think very unpopular.
Yeah, let me get in yes. What else? Anybody else? Especially like commuter.
It also depends if you have a top-down or bottom-up a leader. If you have a bottom-up, you have more influence, and if you have that feeling of belonging to a firm, you will do things, at least so it is in Denmark. Um, I think it depends on how you feel to the other people, and it could be unfair if you are dictated to do something. I'm not glad of being dictated. I have my own choice, but in a frame of freedom, saying yes and no. You have a choice. You do something on autonomy, and then you do your best. It's the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard who works in that way. I think he's great.
Yeah. I think he was quite attuned to what was natural for the brain.
Yeah.
So as always, fairness is something to pay attention to, and communication is helpful. We chose Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays because here's what we were thinking. Here's why. This is, this is the reason. That can help. Doesn't satisfy everybody, but it can certainly help. Expectations. So where I went with expectations is, is it going to be the same? So people all create their own expectations. We're going to be back in the office X days a week or not. I get to choose. But if I do, I expect everyone else is going to be there, or I expect it's going to be like it used to be, still free lunches and the full fridge and all that kind of stuff. And if it's not, sometimes the very small things, the fridge isn't stocked anymore. A lot of organizations are stocking fridges with yogurts and juices and things like that. Oh, we're not doing that anymore. Oh, my people I used to work with, they're not coming in anymore. How disappointing. And disappointment just, again, it goes to that disengagement place. So having conversations with people, here's how we think it's going to be, here's how we would like it to be, how do you want it to be, and create conversation. So much of this is about conversation, communication. And our last one is certainty. Of course, we can't predict anything exactly. We can make some good estimates, and whatever you can create certainty about is helpful to people, because a lot of people want to know what's going to happen, who else is going to be there, how are we working, are we wearing masks, what else is happening? A lot of questions. And the more you can answer without dictating or engage people in conversations about here's what we see is going to happen, here's what we know, and here's what we don't, can be quite helpful. No? So I'd like to invite you into a conversation. So Frode will split you into two groups of three. And the question is, what are the conversations in your organization? So this, if you're not working in an organization or connected directly, it might be what are conversations that your clients are having in their organization? And how could you create more safety and certainty for your people, or how can you support clients to do that as well? It'll be a 10-minute-ish conversation, let's have it a 12-minute conversation. We'll be back here in 12 minutes, two groups of three. That's the conversation. And does anybody need a refresher of be safe? I'm sure you've taken notes if you wanted to. So have a great conversation with one another. See you back in 12 minutes. Welcome back. I was, apologies to you too. I was saying there's 2 times 3, and that was
Well,
counting me.
I did start off, I wondered how 5 were going to be divided into 2.
But Laurie, now I have the chance. I can tell you, I'm launching a book.
Are you?
The Power of Women, and you are in that book.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
You do you remember that you talked about routines and habits?
Mm.
And I have written a chapter where you are.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. Just curious what you gained from that conversation, or if you want to share what you talked about. Anybody?
We were a bit autonomous.
Sorry, Olivia?
We were a bit autonomous, so we did our own thing.
Okay, going for autonomy. Great. And the other group? Sorry.
Right. We also decided we covered belonging because we got to know each other.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So practicing belonging and autonomy. Fantastic.
Laurie, is it possible to do a screen so that we can see everyone?
Sure.
Exit out. Sorry.
I will stop. I'll just stop screen sharing for the moment.
Thank you.
Reason I can't do that? Yeah.
Oops, perfect. Let's see, there we go. Well, certainly for me, it was really a pleasure, and I want to apologize for coming in late. My other meeting ran late, and then I guess when you asked me a question, somehow I got logged off, so I want to apologize about earlier. But it was just so lovely to have had a chance to talk to Teresa and Vicki, and I think all of us kind of working for ourselves, and then I think Vicki has some clients with some smaller organizations. It was very interesting to enter from that perspective, to really feel that the importance of the engagement and the conversations is sometimes largely dependent on the size of the organization, what sector,
Yeah, sure.
and so forth. And we also had an opportunity for each of us to share the importance for ourselves to be in kind of returning to be in person or online. And one of the things that I shared is just when we have one-on-one clients, I find it to be very powerful to meet online. And it also kind of turns down the noise of all of the traveling restrictions and some of the concerns that are out there.
Yeah.
But for organizational needs, there are often at times the I guess nonverbal cues very present, and the sensory awareness or the somatic I guess language that I tend to pick up in person.
Right.
I find that to be really important to to determine based on the needs and the audience really, and what the intentions are. So
yeah, so you find the in-person important to get those signals, or are you saying they're disruptive?
I actually find it to be very important to get the signals, and it could be somewhat, because there's a lot of disruption now to even pick up those disruptive signals. And what I also believe is very important is oftentimes with the people that I engage in, there isn't necessarily the awareness of what their body may be expressing, or what the energetics that are being expressed within the workplace.
Yeah.
So there may be that mental clarity, but it's not in totality what's happening.
Right. Great.
For letting me share.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I can just imagine, Shensen, that that's happening. I mean, that can happen in a coaching conversation, but that's happening whether people are aware of it or not when people are working together. And I think some people don't know how to express that or don't really know what's going on. We're all feeling it. You know, we have so little conscious attention compared to everything else we're picking up. But people still pick up a lot, and we're not quite aware of all that stuff we're picking up. We like it or we don't like it, or it's, you know, helping us or distracting us. And sometimes we don't even know what are all those things that are helping or distracting. As a coach, you've probably trained yourself to pick those up. Yeah. Teresa or Vicky, anything to add from your group conversation?
Yes, I think to add there to what Jensen's just said, I think, you know, moving forward, it's that certainty that we all need. We need to know and learn and adapt to this new way of being and reflect on the past 18 months and rewire the way we're going to move forward. And we can't just accept things that are, you know, things are new now. So I'm getting distracted. My husband's saying goodbye because he's going away for 2 days. See, this is it, isn't it? This is what goes on in the digital world. Rest my case. But yeah, so I think yes, I don't really need to say any more. I think Jensen said enough for what we discussed.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Teresa. Anything else for you, Vicky?
It was a nice moment to share and get to know each other and find out about different experiences. So I think, yeah, just what we talked about, the certainty, the sureness, and looking at fairness and who should maybe make the decisions in a company. Is it ultimately the owners of the company, or how involved can the people working in the company be in that decision making? So I think it's, you know, as we talked about, it's a bit different for every company, different situations with that. So, but yeah, bringing back this certainty and security around things.
Yeah. Well, I'm just hoping that companies will start putting a little more attention on the impact it's going to have on engagement. I know they're all doing different things, so yeah. Thanks, Vicky. What else? Anything else? What are you taking away? Maybe you just, if you want to type it or speak it, either way is fine. What do you want to take away? What are you taking away from this conversation of something you will do? All of you are coaches. It's not about organizations, but having gone through Be Safe and Certain and details, maybe you've had some new thoughts about how you want to work. Anybody willing to share? What's your takeaway as you've thought about that and discussed it for close to an hour?
To be intercultural. I just told that I try to arrange a course in tango where you have a follower and a leader, and the interpretation is also to connect and to belong to a community. And if you are intercultural, you don't need the language, you only need the language of tango. Mm-hmm. It's also the way to be a greater community.
Nice. Nice. We don't have to rely on our usual forms of communication. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Yura. Other takeaways given this conversation?
I'm happy to share, Laurie. I feel that your comment about having conversations just really resonated with me, and there's so much that we miss in terms of being human.
Mm-hmm.
our social interactions, our collaboration, and all of that that often we take for granted.
Yeah.
And by having the opportunity to speak the unspoken and other things that really greatly influence our lives, and or even to name what is fair.
Mm.
Just having the opportunity in the space to be heard and to focus the communications on the human aspect is really powerful. So I really had an opportunity to pause when I was listening to you. So that's what I want to share. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go in actually the Be Safe and Certain model. I really love it, and it's quite a nice one to use with clients to sort of look at things objectively. So that's what I'm going to take away. And I think expectations and certainty are two things that I certainly will work on personally.
Great, great. Thanks, Teresa. Any other takeaways? Then I'll leave it at that. I do want to share with you in the last few minutes of this session, Rewired to Relate. Did I share that properly? You're seeing a screen with Rewired to Relate on it, are you? Yes, okay, thanks. It doesn't have the outline around it for some reason. We've been talking about organizations and Be Safe and Certain and how to create a culture where people and teams thrive. And there's so many aspects to it. And what we're doing in the Rewired to Relate program is creating a foundation for people, internal people, coaches, team members, everyone really, to look at Be Safe and Certain and other elements from the brain, other models and aspects of the brain, all of it coming together in one human being and every human being and the way we interact, and all of that creating the culture. So how do we create a culture consciously rather than just having this default stuff running around all the time? How do we do that consciously? And we start with understanding how our emotional brain is working, how I'm reactive, and how I am interactive. So it's all about how am I doing that? How do I be more conscious about that so that I can work better with others? It's all about working better with others. And this emotional brain work comes back to, we need to take care of our brain. We need resilience. We need well-being. We need to take care of ourselves so that we can make the choices for ourselves and for our teams. So it is a 5-week virtual program, 6 weeks including a launch webinar. And here's the structure of it. There's online content, meaning you log into a place and you spend about a half an hour a week, 5 chapters, 5 weeks. So for each chapter, there's about a half an hour of online work, just reading a little bit, watching a video, maybe there's a little quiz, and different pieces. We're trying to make that interactive and engaging. So the content is delivered that way. It's also supplemented by 3 webinars that I run, and there's a whole cohort that meets together, and then there's small learning groups. So the whole cohort is broken into small learning groups of about 4 people, and in those learning groups, you talk about what you've done with the work, perspectives, share learning. Of course, there's exercises to do that are in the online program, suggested exercises for you to take this to your own life and work, so you can really learn it it's like a drip fed. That's why it's 5 weeks long. There's a lot of material that people can go through in a few hours, but in this drip feed way, focus on one aspect at a time, deepen the learning in your own life, and then share with others. And most people say that sharing with others is the place where it comes most alive, like having conversations on these webinars. And here's just a couple of comments that people have made as they've taken this program in the past. I really loved, there were a couple of master coaches too in a program. They said, wow, this is the essence of emotional intelligence, which I've been teaching for a long time. And they've learned new aspects of it and new ways to understand themselves and interact with others and even teach emotional intelligence. So it is about neuroscience, but it's really about humanity. If you are interested in Rewire to Relate or you want to know more, we have a webinar called What is Rewire to Relate? And you can find that on our website. Thoda, I think, is putting in a chat that links you to the website. And from there, you can find the What is Rewire to Relate webinar. If you want that link directly, just let me know and we'll send you a link directly. So, any final words from anyone?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for engaging in the conversation.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's really
Thank you.
nice to meet you in person as well, because I just watched you on these large webinars before. So
Yeah, likewise. Well, thank you. It's great to see you live. Appreciate it. Hope you'll come back next time.
Yeah.
And we'll see you around, certainly. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great September. Have a great back to work season.
Thank you.